Welcome back to the Everything Financial Radio program. I am extremely pleased to have with me today Congressman Justin Amash, who represents Michigan's 3rd District in the U.S. Congress. Congressman Amash was elected to his first term in November of 2010. He received a bachelor's degree from the University of Michigan and his Juris Doctor from University of Michigan Law School. Congressman Amash was one of the few representatives to have a perfect attendance during the 112th Congress, not missing one of the 1,608 roll call votes. In October of 2010, Time magazine named Congressman Amash one of its 40 under 40 rising stars of U.S. politics. Congressman Amash, welcome to the program, and thanks for being here.
Thanks, Dennis. Thanks for having me on.
Hey, Congressman, I want to get your views on the economy, but first, I would be remiss if I didn't get your views on some of the topics being discussed in Washington these days. Let's begin with the seizure of 2 months' worth of journalist phone records at the AP by federal authorities. Give us your view of what happened, and then, if you would, explain to the listeners your proposed legislative response.
Well, we're still trying to get all the details of it, but whether or not it was criminal, there's some problems with current law. Under current law, you can get, the government, that is, can get an administrative subpoena and can come after people's phone records. And that means your phone records, it means journalists' phone records. And so all they have to do if they want to conduct an investigation is get an administrative subpoena. They don't have to go to the judicial branch. They don't have to go to a court for any review of it. And they can come and gather your phone records and get all sorts of basic subscriber information, your name, your address, telephone records, credit card number, other information. So what we want to do with our bill, I have a bipartisan piece of legislation that I put together. That's H.R. 2014. We call it the Telephone Records Protection Act. And I have Zoe Lofgren from California, Mick Mulvaney from South Carolina, and Jared Polis from Colorado, who introduced it with me. And it's a bipartisan group, 2 Republicans, 2 Democrats. And what we want to do is require the government to get a court order to get phone records. So if they want to come after your phone records, or that means any individual or a journalist's phone records, what they have to do is go to a court and show that they got to present specific and articulable facts showing that the material is relevant to an ongoing criminal investigation. So it would just basically allow some judicial oversight.
Well, Congressman, I want to shift gears a moment because you were removed from the House Budget Committee, and it seems that may have occurred because you voted against the Paul Ryan-crafted budget and instead preferred an alternative that balanced the federal budget more quickly. You observed via Twitter that, and I love the quote, "Only in Washington is someone taken off the Budget Committee for wanting to balance the budget." What's your current take on this? And let our listeners know what your view is. Is there any hope that Washington ever gets its fiscal act together?
Well, I'll say that Republicans are doing a lot better job than Democrats have done in recent years, certainly in the recent past, recent decades. So I'll give Republicans a lot of credit, Paul Ryan a lot of credit, for putting together some budgets in the past few years that are much better than what we've seen before. The problem is that the concerns we face as a country, the fiscal problems we face as a country, are much bigger than what we faced before. And so even though the budgets are better, the problem is much larger. And so we need to actually take a much bigger step. And one of the problems I had with the House Republican budget was I've had 2 votes on it over the past 2 years, and one for 2012 and one for 2013. And the problem I had was that the budget didn't even comply with our Budget Control Act. That's the law we put in place as part of our debt ceiling agreement. So the House budget was going to spend more than Republicans and Democrats had already agreed to spend. And I think that's not an appropriate approach for Republicans to take. If we agree that we're going to cut spending, we should cut the spending, and we shouldn't have a budget that's higher than that. I think it's going to take a lot of change in Congress to get to the point where we actually get our budget balanced, because there are too many people here who have been here for decades. who have been appropriating money far beyond what taxpayers can afford, far beyond what is allowed under our Constitution, and it's not likely they'll change anytime soon. I think you need some new people in here who are more committed to debt reduction, and I have hope. I think there are a lot of good people getting elected.
Well, Congressman, I'd like to shift gears and talk a bit about the economy. The Federal Reserve is engaging in easing to the tune of $85 billion a month. They're purchasing mortgage-backed securities as well as U.S. Treasuries. My question for you is, are you concerned that as a result of this, the country might see inflation, or, in your view, are debt levels too high both in the private sector and public sector to see inflation, and might we be headed for a deflationary period? What's your take?
Well, that's always hard to predict. I mean, when you look at the economy, it's not an easy thing to predict whether you're going to get inflation or deflation. I can say that the debt levels are not sustainable, and we've gone into unprecedented territory with the amount of assets that the Federal Reserve is buying up. It's really unprecedented. So it's hard to know precisely what the outcome is going to be. And I think there are a few economists out there who will tell you, oh, we know precisely what's going to happen here. Also, the world's always changing. There's always technological advancements that make us more productive as an economy. So there are a lot of things to mitigate even bad economic scenarios, such as technological improvements. So it's hard to say, but I can tell you that the debt levels, to me, are not sustainable in the long run, because eventually you end up spending most of your budget just financing the debt. I mean, you're going to end up with interest payments that are so high that every year you could have $1 trillion or more interest payments on the debt, and we can't really sustain that going forward. We have to find a way to bring our budget back down to reality. Otherwise, we're going to be spending all of our revenue on interest, and everyone knows that that's not a winning scenario for a country or a household.
Well, let's shift gears. Relating to the economy, let's talk tax policy. And I'd like your opinion, Congressman. To what extent is U.S. tax policy limiting full economic recovery? And if Congressman Amash were able to determine U.S. tax policy, how would it be different than it is today?
Well, the tax policy is definitely limiting our economic growth as a country. And you can see now, even with this IRS scandal, part of the problem, which I think is not discussed enough, is that the code is so complicated that it creates these situations where the government is making arbitrary decisions about who gets to benefit and who doesn't get to benefit from the tax code. So if I were in charge of tax policy, I would simplify the code dramatically and try to take a lot of the uncertainty out of it. I try to take a lot of the arbitrariness out of it, so that you couldn't have agencies or officials deciding who they're going to go after. I'd move to a consumption-based tax system if possible. At least in the interim, that would be a step in the right direction. A lot of people have talked about things like the fair tax, and I'm not sure I'd endorse every aspect of the fair tax, but certainly going to a consumption-based tax instead of an income tax would be a step in the right direction. But if you're going to do that, I think you have to make sure that the income tax can't come back.
Congressman, I was reading some articles getting ready for this interview, and I noticed that there's a lot of folks out there in the media comparing you to Ron Paul. In fact, you've even been called the next Ron Paul by some analysts. What's your take? What do you think of that comparison?
Well, I'm flattered by it in many ways. I mean, he's someone I think who really came here and made a huge impact on public policy by having a huge impact on people at home. But there are a lot of differences between us. I think the reason you'll often hear that is because we're both very independent. His son is a senator right now, so I think his son is probably the closest example of what Ron Paul might be currently in Congress. But even his son, Rand, has a lot of differences from his father. I think that's normal. We're all here as individuals, and we're doing our best to stick to the principles and values we have and represent our own constituents. But I think the independent streak that runs in Ron Paul and what he represented, what he exemplified, I think that's true in me and a lot of the new members who are here.
Well, Congressman, I would be remiss if I didn't ask you this question. There's been a lot of speculation about you running for the Senate seat of retiring Michigan Senator Carl Levin. Any chance you want to make my day and make an announcement here on the program?
The only announcement I'll make is that I'm certainly looking at this. I think it's a good opportunity. There seems to be a lot of momentum on the side of Republicans right now. Because the administration has overstepped and revealed what I think a lot of people knew about it already, that it's not transparent, that there's a lot of Chicago-style politics going around where they basically will do anything to go after those who oppose them. And the public's not happy about that. The American people want to see some transparency, want to see accountability, and want to see a government that's fair, that is not discriminating against people on the basis of their political views or any other basis. So there's an appetite for that, and I think our Republican candidate needs to be one who appeals across the board. I think I certainly appeal to conservatives as well as moderates and independents, and that's important because the state of Michigan is a marginally Democratic state, and I think you've got to appeal to people across the aisle, and I've certainly done that with a lot of my positions.
Congressman, last question. You mentioned Chicago-style politics and the administration, and certainly it's been a tough couple of weeks for the administration. The attack on the U.S. Embassy in Benghazi is a story that just won't go away. What is your opinion as to what should happen here from an investigative perspective, and where should this go?
Well, there's a lot of questions that remain unanswered, and we know that the administration made a lot of effort to misinform the American people about what was going on. There was a lot of blaming a YouTube video. We had Susan Rice go on TV and misdirect people, whether intentional or unintentional. There were certainly things said that turned out not to be true. So we want to get to the bottom of it, and the bottom line for me is not just understanding whether the administration did something wrong, but why. And I think we haven't gotten to the bottom of that. There are a lot of aspects of this story that I don't understand, and I'm going to take the time to ask the proper questions and talk to people who do know about it and know more. And let's hear from some of the people who were there, who lived through it, and find out why this happened so that we can prevent incidents like this in the future.
Well, Congressman, we certainly thank you for joining us today. We hope you'll come back.
Thanks so much, Dennis. I appreciate it.
Everything Financial Radio will return after these words.